welcome to The World According to George M. Or George with an accent. Either way, it's fine, I guess. Anyway, today we're going to deal with a topic that may be sensitive to some, but I think is worth visiting. And it has to do with how we seek knowledge nowadays. In the old days, if we needed an answer and we needed it quickly, if our parents could afford it or we had a neighbor with the set, we would go to the Encyclopedia Britannica. A little better than the Encyclopedia Americana, as I recall. Today, most people, if they need an answer quickly, they go to Google. And Dave Devlin, my guest for today, it's a walking encyclopedia of all things magic. He's the Google of magic.
As long as I have access to Google, anyway.
As long as he has access to Google. But Dave, what we want to discuss is the fact that you can go on any platform today and see someone revealing what magicians would call an effect, what everyone else calls a trick, and they basically get a kick out of revealing how something is done, as if it were a great mystery that they are bringing to light. But the one thing that knowing the mechanics of a trick, for lack of a better term, doesn't make you an expert or a good presenter of that effect. Share your thoughts on what is going on today and how long it's been going on. And then we'll deal also with the fact that professional magicians do actually create effects that they sell through specialized magic shops to other professional magicians. But there is a difference. So lead the way.
Yeah, the difference is that when you walk into a magic shop or go nowadays online to an online magic shop and you buy a trick or a book or whatever, you're paying for the knowledge. You're paying for the education, and you're paying the creators of those effects and tricks and things of that nature. So it's not just being given away. You actually have to seek it out. You have to find, and even then, sometimes you get the instructions and it says, do a double lift and an Elmsey count. And if you don't know what those things are, well, you have to go on another search. But in my lifetime, the exposure of magic, where it was just being tossed out, given away for free, when I became aware of that kind of a thing was in the early 90s. The early 1990s. It probably goes back further than that. I don't know. I'm just talking about my own personal experience. The first I really remember was the World's Greatest Magic TV specials that they did every year around Thanksgiving time. Those were great. And they always had a segment where one of the performers from the special would teach a very simple magic trick. Some of the things they gave away was stuff that's been around for, years and years and years. And were just kind of simple little tricks that you could find pretty much in any kid's magic book. Some of the tricks that was more like, you probably shouldn't have given that away. And then, of course, it went on to the Masked Magician, which those were really horrible specials, because all it was just exposure of magic, mostly of the large-scale illusion variety, but exposure nonetheless. Now, with things such as YouTube, you can just go onto YouTube, look up a trick, and probably find a video that'll either expose it or teach it, and they always put it as tutorial, as if somehow that makes it okay. But one thing that I've noticed is every time there's something like this, magicians get up in arms, and rightfully so, because it is their craft, and I wouldn't want people giving away my secrets and things like that. but it's never been the destruction of magic. Magic has always endured. It continues. Um, I think the one thing I'd for this discussion we should focus on is the use of YouTube, especially YouTube. Sometimes, I mean, there's other platforms similar to YouTube, but YouTube is the number one. I did because I knew we were going to be talking about this tonight. Here the other day, I went on YouTube and I just put in one of my favorite effects called "Misled" by Tim Wink, and that's been a staple of my performing repertoire since I was 17 years old, 16, 17 years old, something like that. And most of the videos on YouTube were just performances. I had to search for a while before I saw somebody giving it away, and even then, I don't even think I watched the video, but because I already know how it's done, so I didn't need to. But I think a lot of times, when a magician goes out and performs, I think sometimes there's this worry that the people that watch the show or the performance are going to race right home and look up YouTube and find all the tricks that they just watched that night. And I don't think that's the case. Um, I think sometimes magicians worry about too much when there's not that much to worry about, and that's my phone. I apologize.
Well, while you go to the phone, Dave, one thing, and by the way of disclosure, you and I both have a record as professional magicians. I'm retired now, but we do create effects. Mostly you create them, I videotape them, and we put them on some of the shops that cater to professional magicians. But the one thing that we cannot teach, even with the creations that come from your mind, is the artistic side. Just because you know the mechanics doesn't make you a good performer. And you also talked about the technical aspect that, sure, somebody may say, okay, I remember years ago, I was reading on one of the sites, Penguin Magic, someone who had purchased an effect for his grandchild and wrote as the review, well, hey, this really wasn't any good. I bought it for my grandkid, but he can't duplicate it. He can't do it. Of course, it was a card trick that required a couple of things that you and I know, such as an elf's deal, something like that. But to them, it was speaking in a foreign language. They had no idea what that meant, so they could not replicate what the performer on the tutorial, the real tutorial that someone bought, was doing, because they said you will need to know this and this and this. And of course, it meant nothing to the grandpa or the grandkid. So, really, does it even make a difference that they are revealing these things if you can't perform those effects in a way that would entertain?
From a magician standpoint, yeah, it matters, because if I go down to do the trick and somebody who has seen me before has looked it up and then ruins it for everybody else, and that's the thing, it ruins it for the other people. You want to ruin it for yourself? Okay, go ahead. But when you start ruining it for other people, that's when I have an issue with it. Now, what you were talking about with the grandpa buying the trick for the kid, and all of a sudden now he's surprised that the kid can't, perform to the level of whatever he expected. Um, there was a time when I worked at Brad Burt's Magic Shop in San Diego, and this guy came in. I had never seen him before. I don't know what he wanted, but he wanted, and this was his criteria. He wanted an incredible trick that would make him the most amazing magician anyone had ever seen. It required no skill, required no practice, and no instructions. That's what he walked into the shop and demanded. And it was literally like a demand. And in the end, there was nothing I could do. It was like, okay, so let me get this straight. You want me to endow you with magical powers that will let you control the laws of physics instantaneously. And it was like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. I was like, sorry, you're not finding it here, pal. Because I always took, and I don't know, maybe it was because of my youth and stuff like that, that I always got a little snippy with people who would just walk into the magic shop and want that kind of a thing. Because my attitude was, well, if you want to, this is an art form. This is a performance art. It's not just something that anybody can get up and do. Which, unfortunately, I know there's the saying, the slogan from years past, that magic is easy once you know the secret. And I've always hated that, because now there's the attitude of anybody who, heard that, maybe not heard that specific advertisement, and it was on an advertisement, that magic is just something anybody can do. And that's, sadly, is not the case.
Audience management is key in magic. Reading the audience, knowing which person. In my case, I used to do mentalism. You do all kinds of magic, but your specialty is close up and prestidigitation. I had to kind of read the room and see whom I thought would be
Well, you have to do that
cooperative.
with any,
Who was there to have a good time, right? He wasn't there to make me look bad.
whether you're doing close-up magic at a table in a restaurant, or if you're working the largest theater in the world. Um, for example, when I go to a table, when I'm doing restaurant work or whatever, or a banquet, and I go to the table, I'm picky about which tricks I'm going to perform. I introduce myself, I talk for a moment, and I'm reading them. If these are people that are going to challenge me at every step of the way, I'm probably not going to do a trick that uses, um, you know, that's heavily gimmicked, if gimmicked at all. Because if they grab something from me, or I'd rather them grab a regular deck of cards than a very expensive gaff deck. You know, um, reading audience, and that's only something you can learn with experience. There's really not a book or a video or anything that's going to really teach that kind of a thing.
And it's not only reading the audience, it's also timing. It's also knowing how to put a show together. Just doing tricks doesn't make you a magician. Even if you do them fairly well, you're not going to entertain anyone unless you take them on a certain ride. You have ups and downs. There is the element of surprise. Oh, I didn't see that coming. Um, and getting back to audience management before we go further into the artistic end of things, there are certain rules that I think all of us live by. If you're going to perform something and you're going to ask a young lady to help you with the performance, you have to ensure that the boyfriend or the husband doesn't look bad and you make it appear as if, look, your boyfriend is an idiot. He can't, I tricked him. Because then you have a real problem in your hands. Dave, do me a favor. Dave, do me a favor. Move a little bit to your left because you're off center. Right there, you're great. Right there, you're fine. Okay, so we're going to pick it up from there. So, because then you're going to have a problem in your hands. The other thing is that performance means that there is an artistic element. The pacing of your speech, the patter. Um, that is something that is not taught. Just because you know how to do a trick doesn't mean that you will have people go, "Oh, that was really good." Usually they walk away after you see some of these tricks on YouTube or Facebook, and you go, oh, why do they do that? And oh, that's really stupid. I mean, that's what I get from it. Perhaps we are somewhat jaded because of our background, but I don't think so.
Why?
Because I think that if it's little Johnny who's seen someone perform a specific effect, and they the biggest thing they took away was, oh, I wonder how it's done, and now they know, well, maybe they think that they've been satisfied. But I think that most people who go to a magic performance, a magic show, don't really want to know how it's done. They want to be, enthralled by the magic, the performance, the mystic air that is created in a magic show. And you'll have two people. One of them will walk away saying, I wonder how they did it. And then they'll be really frustrated if the effect was performed properly, because they're not going to see it the same way, even if they find somebody revealing it. And the other one walks away saying, wow, that was fun. I don't care how it was done.
And that's the latter is what I end up hoping for at the end. I hope they walk away not even caring how it was done. That to where they don't even want to know. They don't even think to themselves, I need to go find out how that was done. Because if that's what they're walking away thinking, then to me, the performer has not done his job properly, his or her job. Um, I want them walking away thinking, that was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. I hope I get to see it again.
And if you've done it correctly, they usually don't care how it was done. They just walk away with a good experience. I mean, um, Penn and Teller, two of the best in the business. Sometimes they reveal the effect while they're performing it. Yet you go, wow, how did they do that? Because their performance skills are at a level that are so up there that even knowing how it was done doesn't mean that
You can do it.
you
You can't replicate it.
don't. Yeah, well, not only not replicate, but that you don't walk away saying, "Well, I know they told me that's how it's done, but I
There's
can't believe
a
it."
principle in magic called the honesty principle. And what that is where the magician, it's not used often, but it has been used, um, tells the audience exactly how the trick is done. But the method is so, the effect overshadows the method so much that they don't believe that that's how it's really done. There's an illusion, I think it's called, I'm not an illusionist, so you illusionists out there watching this, if I get it wrong, forgive me. I think it's called 21 Girls from a Cabinet.
And let me make a little parenthetical stop here. Illusion to you and to me is different than what it may mean to the layperson. An illusion is usually big
Right, the big
equipment,
boxes and stuff like that. Yeah.
big if the big
Right.
box stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, no
So go
problem.
ahead. I'm sorry.
I think it's
Didn't
called
mean to
21
interrupt.
Girls from a Cabinet. I'm pretty sure that's what it was called. And the performer who originated it, I don't remember who it was. Sorry, I'm sure I could look it up, but I'm not going to right now.
Don't tell me you
No,
were
I
going
was
to
going
go
to go
to
to one of my
Google.
books over on the. One of my books has it in there because this is where I read about it. Um, he would say, I've got 21 girls hidden in this box. And that was absolutely true. The way the box is constructed, you can literally hide 21 girls inside the box. But because because the way the box looks, it looks impossible. There's no way there's 21 girls in there. So the audience immediately discounts that as the method. You know, you say, oh, they're sitting between the walls and they're hiding up in the thing. I mean, he tells them everything, but the audience just doesn't believe it. And when you go back to when you're talking about Penn and Teller, their cups and balls routine to me is one of the greatest cups and balls routines ever created. It's magnificent. when you watch it, especially if you're a layperson and you watch Penn and Teller do their cups and balls, at the very end, when they've gone through the explanation and everything, you're still going, I don't have a clue. I honestly have no idea. Because in their case, there's certain things they leave out. All of a sudden, the large load just all of a sudden almost seems to magically just appear under the clear plastic cup that they're using. Um, so even with Penn and Teller, yeah, sometimes they give it away, but most of the time, I think with Penn and Teller, it's more tongue in cheek giving it away.
It's misdirection, the foundation of magic. I was reading recently about David Copperfield. He was admitting that he at times would say, "Yeah, this is how the effect or the illusion is done," but he was not being completely forthright. And they asked, and he admitted, "Yeah, well, yeah, that's the fun of it,
Yeah,
letting people think that, well, this is." This goes to another aspect of revealing these magic tricks. And now many of them have been around forever. They're in the public domain. What makes them different is how we perform them. But there are also effects that are created and marketed at a great
oh yeah.
expense. And why does someone who buy the effect from one of the professional magic shops thinks that it's okay to reveal them, maybe not realizing that they're affecting someone's livelihood and an investment of time, of talent, intellect, and money in creating the effect? What makes them think that they're
I
entitled to
think this
do
is a
that?
generational thing because most of the tutorials and stuff that you see on YouTube are mostly done by kids. I see very few grown up adults doing it, and I think it's one of those things where when you're a kid and you get a new toy, you can't wait to show your friends your new toy and everything about it. And I think that has a lot to do with it. I also think um, because as kids we're told, oh, you have to share everything, you have to be always honest with everything. And I think sometimes the whole idea of keeping a secret, mm, to the younger generation, my son included, though he doesn't go around revealing magic tricks because he knows how I feel about it. um, I think that part is kind of lost on some people, especially kids today. um, so I think there was also during the early 2000s there was a thing called Napster, where somebody just bought some
Yes.
music and they could give it to every single person on earth for free, and there was this attitude of, well, these are uh, you know multimillionaire musicians, so it doesn't hurt them, and that to me was ludicrous. So I think it comes to, I think that's part of the mindset, the attitude that, well, I should just. I remember there was one time on YouTube, and I don't remember what the trick was, what it was, and it was some teenager giving away a trick that was marketed. It wasn't just out of an old book somewhere, which still is wrong, but it was a currently marketed effect. And I was kind of irritated, and I went on and made a comment. I said, this is something that somebody has created and is selling it, and it's their livelihood. What gives you the right? I basically called the kid out on exposing the trick, that it wasn't his to give away. And his flippant answer to me was, "It's a free country. I'll do whatever I want." And I was stunned. I couldn't believe that would be the attitude, especially if these kids have. I mean, some of these things that they're giving away are not cheap. So they've gone and bought it, and now they can just give it away to everybody else. I don't understand that. I honestly don't. But yeah, that was the attitude, and I still think it is. There was a trick that I learned. I don't remember if I learned it out of a book or if another magician taught it to me. because this I learned it years ago, and I did a performance of it and put it on YouTube, and almost instantly, people were asking me to do a tutorial video for it. And I didn't even respond to those comments just because I'm not going to get into a debate about it. I'm not going to argue about it. I'm not going to give this trick away. It's not marketed. I know places where it's published, and I guess I could say, well, if you want to learn this trick, go look it up here, here, and here. Um, but I'm not going to sit back and say, oh, yeah, sure, here, I'll show you exactly how I did this trick that I had to search out or had to be taught, and I had to practice, and I had to put together for myself. And I think they think that magic isn't work, that there's no effort put into it, into a trick or a presentation.
Yeah, they think magic is just knowing how to do the trick,
Right.
the mechanics. Well, let me ask you. I wanna close on three different topics,
Okay.
but we'll go there briefly. Number one, how does one who truly wants to become a magician learn? Start with you, then I'll share a little bit of how I learned, and then we'll move on to um, magicians that we think are masterful in different genres of magic. And at the end, we'll tell them a little bit about where they can find some of our um, effects in case that they want to do to learn them, and what they should do to truly perform them. So, first aspect, how did you learn?
Well, there's a lot of ways to learn magic nowadays. Before, it was you had a private teacher, and if you didn't have a private teacher, you were you were screwed. Essentially, there was nothing much else. Um, I was given a magic set for my 4th birthday by my grandparents. That's how I got started in it, and of course, I bought set after set after set. Um, Later on, when I was starting to learn to read, I'd go to the library and I would start checking out um, books on magic, and I started reading. That's something for me that hasn't stopped. I've got about 1,500 magic books in my library. I say collection, but it's a library. Um, there's videos. I'm not talking about YouTube um, videos. I'm talking about professional quality videos, DVDs that you can get from magic shops mostly. Um, there's of course marketed effects. My personal belief is the best way to learn is always a professional teacher, a live person who you can ask questions to, who you can bounce off ideas off of. But barring that, I always say that video is the best way to learn technique, and books are the best way to learn effects and tricks. That's that for me is how I like to do it, for me personally. Now it's gotten to a point now that I can they're interchangeable for me. If there's a technique I don't know, I'll always go to the video go to a video. But mostly, if a book tells me to do certain techniques, chances are I already know it. So but I also like videos. There's some videos out. Some tricks are only available in video
What is the
format.
best set of books, in your opinion, the collection?
Oh, um, well, there's Card College. If you're interested in card magic, there's Modern Coin Magic by J.B. Bobo for coin magic. Mark Wilson's Course in Magic. Wonderful books, especially for something for beginners
But
here.
what is the
Um,
one collection of books that was the go to for everybody for decades?
well, Tarbell, of course. There's the Tarbell. The Tarbell course is wonderful. It's I think 8 books. I think they put out an 8th book. There might be a ninth, but I don't think so. I think it's still just 8. Um, those are wonderful. The only there's so for me, yeah, Tarbell is great, but to me they're not for beginners because there's so much information that it's just absolute
Oh, and
overload.
we were talking
And I think
about
people,
for professional magicians or magicians who want to do this seriously. So they would have to, I, as in your case, my grandfather started me in magic. I said, "Hey, Grandpa, what is this?" He was a magician. "Oh, wow, how do you do it?" "Well, let me show you." And books were never my friends when it came to magic. I would read it and then go to one of the magicians that I knew and go, "All right, I don't get this, man. Can you show?" I do that to you all the time to this day. Not to mention that you and I learned the terminology in magic differently because of languages. And oh, what do you call
Right,
that again
right,
in
sure.
English? That type of thing. Well, in French it's called this, or in Spanish it's called that. So, how about for mentalism? For me, at least, it was Corinda, the series. It was books, 13
13 steps.
steps. Now you're
Yeah.
saying that is no longer just 13 steps in book form.
Well, it's still 13 steps. What it was, as far as I understand, because this is before my
Are
time,
you
it
calling
would
me
be
old?
you got these lessons. No, I'm calling myself old. Um, you got a lesson in the mail like every month or something like that, and you got 13 of them. I think that's how it was done, and now it's just been compiled into one book. Um, and it's a wonderful book. Some of the stuff is kind of outdated. Some of it's a lot outdated, and a lot of it is still very, very viable, very usable stuff, excellent stuff. Um, in fact, if you're going to get into mentalism, I think that's a book you need to have. You need to read it because a lot of books that came after that will refer you to Corinda. They'll say, "Okay, here you can. I want you to do a center tear to get this kind of information to get the information. Just use whichever favorite method you have. And if you don't know any methods for a center tear, well, they'll say you can find good ones in Corinda's book, 13
You know,
Steps to
one
Mental."
one one mentalist who did a great job using the series that we're referring was Richard Osterland. He has the Corinda, yeah, DVDs, and it's deals with it. Um, who do you consider the top three mentalists of all time?
Ooh, the
Hmm.
top three mentalists
Yeah.
of all time? That's rough. There's, of course, Animan. Um, oh my gosh, I can't pick just three, but I would say Animan at least. Um, Max Maven, or the late Max Maven. Um, and probably Al Mann, maybe because they contributed so much to the art of mentalism that they're the ones I would say that's why I think they're the greatest. Now maybe um, one of them may not have been like the greatest performer ever, but if you're talking about performances, um, I really wouldn't. I'd be hard pressed to name just three, but I think if, in my opinion, when I'm looking for a mental effect, those are probably the three that have influenced me personally the most.
Well, of course, Max was just incredible. I mean, that there'll never be another one because it was just not the effects. Many of them were very simple to do. His mind just simplicity was what made it great, and his performance as a performer, he was incredible. He's one of the first to actually perform mentalism live on TV, and we know some of those effects, like okay, focus on a card, and now boom, they disappear, and your card is gone, type of thing. Which we know what that is, but we're not going to reveal it here. I like Richard Osterlind as a teacher. I think he does a wonderful job. He's very laid back, and his style is very. I want to say it in a way that it makes sense. Is the opposite of Max Maven. It's not the look into my eyes type of thing. It's more like, well, here, it's not as intense. It's like, well, here, I'm going to do this, and oh wow, look, it worked. Um,
He's just as surprised at the ending as
right?
the
Yes,
audience.
he is. Card magicians, I'll start for me. Um, who would you say I would pick? He is from Europe. He is from
Giobi.
Europe. Giobi.
Giobi. Yeah, Giobi. Yeah, for you, definitely. I love him, by the way. Yeah, he's a wonderful. His books are fantastic. He's a very good performer. I enjoy watching
And
him. I
Roberto
enjoy learning
Giobi
from
also
him.
has that no big deal and oh wow, look, it worked. That he brings that.
Yeah, he's just a
Yeah,
surprise.
but he's masterful. Roberto Giobi, incredible. And I think we would be remiss if we don't at least mention the name of Di Vernon
Oh
as
yeah, Divernon. Divernon
no,
wasn't
he
just
was
cards.
just a brilliant.
He was cards, coins, some cabaret magic. With his linking rings and the cone and the ball and the silk and things like that. And he kind of he embodied all of magic. I don't think there's a magician out there um, who would say he was not influenced at all by Di
There's a
Vernon.
story I heard once at the Magic Castle that years ago the professor, as he was known, was sitting outside the Magic Castle on the steps overlooking the hotel that's directly across the street. And I can't remember the name of the hotel or what it was at the time. But someone sat next to him and said, Professor, what are you doing? And it was kind of a cool day. He had been there for hours watching people do what? Do you know the story?
I think they were
Yeah,
taking their
taking off
coats
their coats
off.
and putting them on. And he goes, there are at least 67 or 68 ways to put on a coat. And that was the studious nature of a true magician. So now, for those that truly want to learn magic so that they can perform it professionally, where can they find the books? Where can they find the DVDs? I know that's antiquated now, or the downloads that might
Downloads.
lead them in the right direction. And basically, there are two shops that one is a wholesaler. In fact, they carry our stuff, which is Murphy's Magic, and they distribute to almost every magic shop around the world. And then I would say Penguin is probably one of the leading shops in the U.S.
Penguin is great, especially for beginners, people who have never done magic. They have a video for free. It's like 10 magic tricks that are really good, and it gives you a good start. They're not. I don't know if they're exactly self working, um, but it gives you a good starting point, and it's free. You go. It's right on their front page. You go and download it, and you
Explain
start
what,
from there.
what you mean by self working.
Meaning there's no sleight of hand involved. I think there is some
But it's
sleight of
minor.
hand
It's something that they can
involved
master
on that
very
video.
simply, right?
Yeah, but it's something that is simple that you could give. I could probably give it to my 10. Well, he's 11 now. My 11-year-old son. I could probably have given it to him when he was 9, 10 years old, maybe, and he would have been able to do everything on the video. That's just a good place to start.
We might as well put a plug for our stuff if you want to see some of the stuff that Dave has created and we've performed in both in English and Spanish is available in both languages. That would be um, you can search even in Penguin at you'll be under the name of AMG Magic, American Magic Guild. AMG Magic. You can also go to Murphy's. They will not sell you the effect directly, but you can look at AMG Magic, and then you can at least see what you like, and then go get it at your local shop. Was that a good plug in? A good plug?
Yeah, it was
Okay, so
perfect,
we got to pay the bills,
and
and
hopefully there's
more
more
coming
coming.
very
So
soon. It's been a while since we've recorded anything. Well, Dave, a real
yeah,
pleasure. It's always wonderful to talk to you.
it was
You,
fun.
it's always fun, and hopefully we can do more. Perhaps we can invite other magicians. And
Hmm.
the one
That'd be
thing that
great.
I would leave anyone who's watching, the thought I would leave with them is Magic is a performance art. It's not about the trick, it's about the magician. Develop your own style. Even when you see how something is done, make it your own. It has to be your presentation that makes the difference, not the mechanics of any one trick or effect, as we call them. What last thought would you leave with?
Just to kind of echo what you just said, when I write an ebook of a trick I've come up with or whatever, I really don't give a presentation. I leave it bare bones. When you're reading how to do the trick I've come up with, you're getting the mechanics, because I don't want people imitating me. I want them to put their own spin, their own presentation, their own personality into the routine itself. Um, so I say, when you're learning magic, try to avoid imitating the person you're watching. If it's if there's a performance at the beginning of the video,
And I'm going to put up
so
an
mix it
email
up.
address if you write to us, Dave or myself, even though it's one email, and you really would like to take this to the next level. Really do it seriously. I have a book I've written that is a handbook for the professional magician. I'll be happy to send you a copy, and if I run out, I'll tell you where you can find it, and we'll go from there. David Devlin, masterful as always. Maybe next time we can have you perform a couple of things, and we'll take it
That'd be fun. Sure.
to the next chapter. Not
All
just saying,
right.
"Hey, get away from Google and Facebook and YouTube to learn magic," but perhaps we can do some teaching on several things.
That'd be fun.
So, to you out there, uh, look for the next podcast with Dave and myself on magic, and we'll take a didactic approach. We'll teach next time. So it's good to have you with us. Thank you for tuning in to The World According to George M. And we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.